briefly, let me very quickly uh, introduce you to this one. This one is topic as Rewired, how to prepare customer for the coming cashless world. So yet another interesting one. Anuj is going to be, the co-founder for Frio is going to be moderating this session. Sachin, who is the Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer in Solutions Global Limited, is one of the panelists, along with Swapnil, the CEO, co-founder for Safexpay, Rosalia, who's the Chief Executive Officer for Bixie, and Paroma Chatterjee, the Chief Executive Officer for Revolt Payment India Private Limited, are the panelists who will be taking over this one. And yet another interesting one, of course. This day has been quite power-packed and quite powerful. I'm sure you would agree with me. So let's go ahead and get this one started as soon as we are ready with the setup. All right, so much has been spoken about digitization since the morning. Earlier, we had heard Mr. Panda also mentioning about the digital modes of payment. Let's go cashless with this one. So I'm going to request the moderator and our panelists to please join us on the stage and take it up. Please, welcome in.
Hello, hello. Okay, I think we can start. So thank you everyone for being here. My name is Anuj. I'm the founder of Frio. It's a full stack consumer neobank based out of India. We do savings, spending, borrowing. We have all products and been doing this for quite a many years. Uh, that's my quick background, but I think we will quickly move to what the panel is and talk a little bit about how we can look at consumers and how they are, or rather how we are preparing them for a cashless world, a cashless society. There are many things that we want to discuss, and I'll obviously try and chair the conversation here, but we'll keep it a little bit open-ended. Um, I'll be looking at my phone a little bit, so please don't mind. I'm not trying to do any WhatsApp messages to my friends, but I'm actually just looking at prepared talking points here, so don't mind that. I'll tell you my quick piece on this, and then we'll move to the panelists before we go down this. I think many of you must be aware that the first bank in India was done in about 1854. Was the first bank that got instituted in the country. And after that, we have seen for about the next 100 years or so, we had around 8,500 banks that all running amok, and then the government stepped in 1960 and nationalized them, and then privatization happened. And since then, money has always played a very critical role of trying to figure out how do we move the economy forward, right? More importantly, I think the government over the last 8, 10, 15, 20 years for that matter, whether with it be it India Stack or lots of other products, has figured out or trying to push for a cashless society. And yet with all the stuff that we've been able to do, and the digital transactions in India have just gone through the roof, right? I don't need to read out statistics, everybody knows this. But our digital transactions have gone through the roof, and yet, cash still continues to be a large part of what we are doing. Maybe we are a very different breed here in this room, and we were just talking about it that we have stopped carrying cash in our wallets, but a large portion of the Indian market still carries some cash. So there seems to be some kind of a bimodal distribution where maybe a certain section of society or a geography stopped carrying cash in their wallet, while the digital transactions have gone up, and yet there seems to be a lot of cash. So I think there's a little bit of a dichotomy that I think we should try and uncover in this panel. That's going to be the objective. These were my 2 cents, or my thoughts rather, and then I will leave it to the panelists to talk more. But before we do that, maybe we could go a round of introductions. So I request each one of you, maybe starting with you, Swapnil. So maybe you could quickly introduce yourself and maybe a one-liner on what do you think about the cashless world, and then we'll dive into the conversation.
Sure. So I'm Sachin Castelino. I run the strategy and transformation for InSolutions Global. So we're a payments processor, and we work with some of the largest banks in the country. So we've got about 75 customers across the globe. So we've been working with banks to work out what their strategy is from a cashless standpoint. And what we have seen is that there are a couple of points here, and this is what I think, right? So one is from a perspective of people like NPCI or Visa or MasterCard or the government, which ends up creating tools for us. So for example, UPI, for example, we talk about the account aggregator framework that is coming through. So these are tools that they create for us. But how we end up using them and how we end up solving those customer pain points is what leads to more of at least that's what I feel, that what leads to more of a cashless society. Just by driving a cashless agenda in itself, sometimes does not work, right? So we see a lot of products that don't take off, right? Where the government has given us those options, but there are no real use cases for them. So the way I think about this is that till the use cases per se and solving those pain points is what should motivate us to drive this cashless society forward.
Okay, thanks. Paroma, you want to go next?
Hello, everybody. I'm Paroma Chatterjee. I am the CEO for Revolut in India. And I am on the mission to bring Revolut's globally acclaimed financial services super app into India to ensure that millions of Indians actually have in their hands what is a true digital-only bank account that is global in nature. While we're on that mission, coming to today's topic around cashless, and I'll pick on from what Sachin said, cashless for the sake of cashless, don't necessarily believe in that. Just to make something cashless, forcing a digital frame doesn't work. But I'll go back to that buzzword of financial inclusion, which is still a topic which has been around for a decade, but requires a lot more to truly solve for. And is cashless a way to get there? To get millions of more Indians included? Yes. Firm believer that cashless is a way to accomplish that, and look forward to sharing more thoughts on this in the course of the panel.
Hey, thanks. I have a few more questions on that, but I'll come to that later. You want to go next?
Hi, I'm Swapnil. I'm co-founder and CEO for Safexpay. We are a payment platform company which actually customize the payment platform for the businesses. We work across payment aggregation platforms, the neo-banking, and we have recently collaborated for a pay-by-face, which will be also a revolution and new innovation for the next India, which is actually transforming on the digital platform.
Thanks. Rosalia?
Hello, everybody. My name is Rosalia Gitau. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Bixie. At Bixie, we are on a mission to get women all over the world to start investing, because rather unfortunately, fewer than 1% of us do, and this is largely to our own detriment. when you ask me about a cashless society, now, of course, we're going to discuss and debate the merits of it. But I want to share an anecdote. So this is the first time I've been to India in 30 years. So you can go ahead and date me. Yep, add some numbers to that. And when I came here, I actually was accompanying my father, who was an international businessman. He was from Kenya. My mother's from the Philippines. My father's from Kenya. And I was born in the US. But he brought me because, I don't know if you know this, but circa 1992, being an international businessman, how do you think we moved money around the world? Just take a guess. Backpacks. That 10,000 US dollar limit was still a reality. And so for my father to have transactions, it was better to bring me along because I also got to transport 10,000 US dollars, right? So that was the last time I was in India. And obviously we've made leaps and bounds since I was just carrying 10,000 US dollars in a purple backpack. And so I think that is just demonstrative of, one of the obvious pros of going cashless. But that being said, there are a number of cons, some of them, regarding privacy, some of them are at a very personal level. And so I really look forward to discussing that with my esteemed co-panelists. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much. That was an awesome story. I have a question. Since the time you landed in India, have you used cash?
I have. Yes, and so there is still a pain point. When I arrived, I had to buy a SIM card, and so I had to go to an FX counter, and then the person at the FX counter said, wait a minute, I'm on break. So he literally stood right next to me for 20 minutes on break, and then I finally got cash, and then I was finally able to buy my SIM card. So it's not seamless, but I did not have to bring a backpack full of cash this time. So, better.
So I think there's an opportunity there for anybody, all the entrepreneurs listening into this. Here's an opportunity of how you can convert that into a business model. But this is a question for all the panelists, and maybe we can start from you or go from Rosalia and we can work backwards. I think the question is that, and it probably stems from what you just said, that is truly a cashless society even possible, right? I think there'll be use cases that people might need it, but even for you, is it even truly possible? And what maybe are the top one or top two reasons that it has not happened so far? What has stopped us, according to you? So maybe we'll go round robin on each of the panelists, and then we'll break it up into individuals.
So 100% cashless society is possible. A bit of background, before I started Bixie, I worked at Alipay in China. And I don't know if anybody here has spent time in China. I mean, it's basically almost cashless. But there's still pain points, right? Because I was a foreigner living there. So even though I'm working at Alipay, I still can't use Alipay because I don't have a bank account because I was a foreigner, right? So that is still a pain point that has to be recognized. But as far as cashless goes, I mean, the noodle vendor in a remote village far outside of the urban landscapes in rural China, she uses Alipay, and not only uses Alipay, uses the investment apps on Alipay. So there is, cashlessness is possible, but whether it's something that we want to have ubiquitously, again, I'm going to share an anecdote, and this is not the nefarious side. This is the very personal side. 2 weeks ago was my husband's birthday, right? We share bank accounts. I live in Thailand. We're basically cashless. But I'm trying to buy him a gift, and he's getting pings every time I go from store to store to buy him things, so he knows what I'm buying. In this regard, you do want some semblance of privacy, and so I actually had to go and find cash so I could continue, in a vain attempt at surprising him for his 40th birthday, right? So I don't necessarily, having seen the extreme of how far we can go into cashlessness in China, which is, kind of leading that pathway, there's a lot of pros, obviously. Watching a woman who sells $1 noodles in a rural area on an investment app was actually my aha moment for Bixie. I knew that because of a smartphone and an internet connection, this was a possibility for women all over the world. But that being said, if I want to surprise my spouse, or moreover, if I just want to have a semblance of privacy, where a company doesn't know every single thing I buy, including, the time I buy my toilet paper or the time I buy my feminine hygiene products, I still want to have that as an option.
Yeah, that's big data for you. Swapnil?
I think cashless society is very much possible. There has been various countries which had set an example. The first country to actually issue the banknotes was Sweden. Today, 98% of the citizens are using credit and debit cards. And there are other countries like Norway, UK, who has. Even India, for that matter, has now reached to a ratio of issuing of more than 100 crore debit card and credit cards. The biggest challenge which is coming into, because the credit card and a debit card is the first step towards the digital transformation or the digital payment ecosystem, and then comes the mobile payments. The mobile payments, because of NPCI's so nice initiatives, launching of multiple products in last 5 years, like UPI, has changed the mobile payments market, but still there are challenges. There are challenges with respect to framework. There are a lot of applications which are coming. There's a trustworthiness issue with respect to the apps. The adoption will always. So there has to be a continuous awareness which needs to be created amongst, it may be in any country. If you need to be a successful adopter of any digital payment ecosystem, and the success ratio has to be high. Because if you see even a credit card, debit card, the activation ratio, the biggest challenge is the activation. I'm an ex-banker and was managing the entire ecosystem. So I know the activation logic is the card active on even an ATM is treated as active. But there is no transactions which are happening on the POS channel. There are no transactions happening on the e-com channel. You have seen Janadhan accounts opened very drastically. RuPay cards were issued, more than 34 crore accounts, which was opened till 2019. I think what is the activation number that is? So adoption. So there is still resistance of adopting these things. There is awareness. There is a lot of things that needs to be educated to this particular segment.
Sure. Paroma, is it even possible? What stopped us so far?
Well, if we go to, for a moment, circa 1000 BC, we're all cavemen. We're having a cave panel in front of a bonfire. You're all in animal skins instead of your suits and listening to us. And Anuj asked this question about, is a non-barter system economy even possible? That's kind of the way to look at it, right? At the end of the day, what is cash? It's paper or metal that you use to peg value against something which you can exchange for various things. What are those various things? The ability to save, the ability to pay in exchange for products or services, the ability to trade by pegging certain values, the ability to keep yourself protected, right? Where is cash in any of this? It's just that it was a medium which has been prevalent for the last so many decades as the default means of using it. But if you were to think about all the kinds of progress that we've made in the last few decades on different modes to achieve the same purpose, I actually firmly believe that it is possible to be able to achieve all of these financial goals of saving, of investment, of payment, of trading, of protection without cash or paper or metal as a medium. Is the answer plastic? Is the answer digital on the phone? The answers could be different, but we're definitely at the cusp of an evolution where we will very soon start seeing cash notes and coins framed on museum walls.
Nice. Quick comments from you. Is it possible?
So for me, the way I like to look at this is that let's look at cash as a product, right? So what is cash actually giving us? It gives us that anonymity. It's quick and easy. And yeah, that's what cash is as a product, right? So if we're going to say, okay, we need to move towards, I'm talking specifically now about India. I know there are other markets that have implemented near cashless societies and things like that. But from an Indian standpoint, today we need to look at the cost of a transaction and whether it makes sense. Let's say, for example, if someone wants like a chewing gum or a lollipop to make that cashless, right? Whether it even makes sense to do that, given the cost of a transaction that's in India, there are certain small values that it just doesn't make sense anymore, right? So from our standpoint, the way I would think about it is to see that how do we provide a similar sort of product. So products where we don't lose some of these good points that are there that come with cash, but of course deal with the challenges that come with cash, right? So
Yeah, it's interesting. All of you spoke about this concept of being anonymous or not being able to be tracked. And we are in the largest FinTech festival of the country, and we all want it to be tracked and digitized, and we want the SMS and the WhatsApp to come every time we make a transaction, but yet we want our privacy. I mean, as founders, it's very different. As consumers, it's probably very different. And the question here actually also ends up becoming that even if you have 5% cashless, 5% non-cashless or 10% non-cashless, does that allow you to complete the circle to deliver the value? So it's pretty interesting actually how anonymity is like a key point in this. So maybe I'll come to you, Paroma, next is, you spoke about financial inclusion as well in your opening remarks. I think it's something that all of us have been trying to do, the government has been trying to do. We have done very well as a country over the last 10, 15 years. But I think, what does it take for that last man or woman standing on that in that street to really come into the ecosystem, into the formal financial ecosystem? And can that be achieved through a cashless kind of society, or are there other ways of achieving financial inclusion which is not related to maybe being cashless? Maybe I'll come to you first, and then maybe Swapnil, you could add.
Okay, so yeah, financial inclusion has been a much touted phrase over the last decade or so. But if you cut out all the noise around financial inclusion as a phrase, at the heart of it, what does it really mean? It means giving every individual an equal opportunity to avail of the same set of financial products and services. Every individual, equal opportunity. Now there, when you break this up, it's actually in two parts. One part is the India or Bharat that you spoke about, where the last person, a woman, a housewife in a 2,000 population village where electricity may not have penetrated today, how does she get access to, let's say, a credit line to be able to sew clothes for her own family or sell them to feed her own family? That's one topic. The other topic is among people who are sitting in this room, who are so-called elite and have access to all kinds of financial products and services. Is it really as seamless? If you have to send money to your sibling who lives in another country, right? Is it seamlessly, conveniently possible as easily as you can send money to the person sitting next to you who's your colleague within your own country? Both of those are financial inclusion problems. Now, when you take those problems one by one, right, let's look at the first one. Let's look at statistics in India that we all know. Out of the 1.4 billion Indians out there, there are 800 million unique individuals with mobile phone connections. They can have multiple mobile phones and SIMs as well. So that's the number of people who are using mobile phone as a device. Not just that, their lives are on this device. They chat on WhatsApp and Snapchat. There are vernacular chats. They share their lives and photographs on Facebook and Instagram, which includes being able to do it in the language of their choice. They consume videos and content on YouTube, not just consume, they even upload from any part of the country, which is today, fortunately, seamlessly connected. So when you have a device which has reached that degree of life of every one of these individuals, now when you cut to financial services, the traditional way of reaching out through a bank, how deep do you think a bank branch can reach? Let's take the next step to an ATM. Can reach further because it's lower cost than setting up an entire bank branch. Can reach a little further, but can it reach the absolute last mile? Again, those are things to be done. Now here you have a device which is already sitting there. So the last mile reach has happened, folks. So if you were to superimpose the same financial products and services from branches and ATMs and kiosks being their channels to this being the default channel, you're putting it in the hands of every individual who already has this in their hands and consuming various things. which is where I think cashless is the way to drive that financial inclusion for the last mile individual. Now coming to the other bit on the elite that I spoke about, the example that Rosalia gave, right? Where even rich businessmen had to carry cash earlier across the border, right? Again, you today have technology which seamlessly connects people across the globe. The World Wide Web is a different country and a different universe in itself. Now, if we're able to leverage that to blur borders between nations and make sending money across international borders as seamless as within your own country, or equip all of you with cards which you can seamlessly use wherever you go, whether you go to Madrid or you go to Philippines, Manila, or you go to an Arunachal Pradesh, Itanagar, or you're here in Delhi. Right? Imagine having tools which make you really global. Again, that is possible with technology, as opposed to cash, which is currency printed with the logo of every individual currency, which necessitates the need of either carrying them in backpacks or exchanging them as you go from here and there. So I actually think cashless is possible to drive financial inclusion on both ends of the spectrum, to give every individual access to the same sets of products and services, and the same level of products and services, no matter where you are in the world.
Hey, thanks so much. That was quite informative, honestly. Swapnil, yes.
Taking ahead this particular topic, though we are talking about same set of products and financial services, but if you look at the reality in the market, if the bank is not able to reach to the village place, they use an alternate channel. So in India, there is business correspondent model which actually reaches.
Yeah.
Today, opening a saving account in a tier 1 or a tier 2 is much easier because the kind of citizens staying here are already adopted internet.
Yeah.
They are using. Yes, the tier 3, tier 4 people are already there on a social. But when it comes to a financial services, there is a mindset block,
Yeah.
which is also a challenge. Second, adopting of this particular financial inclusion and be a part of the ecosystem, they still have to pay an additional cost. Because if you actually open a saving account here, you don't have a cost. But if you go and open an account at the BC centers, you still have a cost in tier 3, tier 4. You do a one cash withdrawal because it's a mindset. The cash always play in tier 3, tier 4 mindset. If you look at the consumer mindset in that particular segment, they still prefer to keep the cash in their wallet. They still prefer to keep the cash at home for all the emergencies. They feel, yes, the digital adoption can be done, but what is the backup? So people also think, what is the alternative? If suddenly one day my phone stops and I'm traveling, I don't have a card, I was completely adopting mobile payments, I don't have a cash. The biggest challenge is here, if all are sitting here, if we check everybody's wallets, minimum 1,000 rupees. Out of us all, when landed on the airports, at least made sure that 1,000 or 2,000 rupees can be withdrawn. This is also playing on, so the backup also playing. The next level is, because the financial inclusion was in a different way, it was limelighted, the digital has come at the back end. So now a digital financial inclusion is a new phrase which has coming. So where are the gaps? The gaps is again creating. I think the strategies which are implemented, we all go and implement strategy in tier 1, tier 2, where the adoption is much easier. Yeah. Can we start from tier 4? Can we start from a village? Can we start making a village digitalized? Can we give a training to them? Can we educate them, saying that this is much easier, this will actually help you, this will increase your savings, this is going to get you interest, this is secured. That comfort. Today, even if you ask a tier 3, tier 4, if you ask them about UPI, wo Google Pay. So they'll give that answer. But is it that secure? So they'll take this name because they know about app, they don't know about what is the ecosystem. So this is also a challenge. So the skill developments, the awareness needs to be taken to this level, so that from a tier 4 we can implement the strategies and bring it to the tier 2, tier 1. That will actually boost the entire digital financial inclusion.
Then digital financial inclusion is the right way. Yes, Paroma.
Yeah, if I may react to one of the things that Swapnil brought about, which is around the banking correspondence. Okay. Now, why banking correspondence? I think banking correspondents are nothing but intermediaries, and the task that they're helping achieve is just twofold, which is education and trust. right? In the process, what is actually happening is it increases costs, because that is still a physical setup, but the banking correspondent needs to have a source of revenue for doing that, and therefore opening a savings account there is more expensive than opening a savings account directly. So to me, a banking correspondent model that you spoke about, Swapnil, is actually a step in the ladder in that journey. That's not the answer that banking correspondent is an alternate. If technology, and those of us who are running fintechs and super apps and trying to digitize banking and financial services, are able to solve for those two problems of being able to educate the customer, which includes in their own language, and give them the ability to reach back to us seamlessly through electronic channels to talk to whenever they have a clarification or a problem. If you're able to solve for that, one of the things that you've put a banking correspondent there for gets taken away. The second is if we're able to build trust, and a lot of our companies who are here are working on absolutely secure digitized environments. The regulator in India, who's a very progressive regulator, I must say, has put in criteria to ensure data is localized and kept so that it's not abused. As long as those are taken care of and customers are made aware of that you can trust, is when, again, the need for that will get taken away. So if we solve for education and trust, we may not need human intermediaries, is the bottom line.
Get rid of the intermediaries.
The only point about BC was you do not have a uniformity for the customer. The one customer who stays in tier 4, it's not his fault. So the government is anyway taking a lot of initiatives. See, the UPI was much successful because there are no costs for a P2P transaction. The moment you start charging, what will happen? That's a question. Today, that's a question in people's mind. If you look at merchants who have adopted UPI, if you ask the bank's view openly, they'll say, is it profitable or it is a loss making? So that's a question which is, so is the original definition of financial inclusion is opportunity has to be equal for everybody. Though I'm staying in tier 4 doesn't mean I will be charged extra for the last mile.
Yeah, I think we can let them continue, but I think we need to move on from that now. I think in India, women have played a very important role in trying to ensure that the savings happen. A lot of the stuff that you spoke about, Swapnil, is when my mother also used to save money separately for us and do it in cash, etc. But I think to achieve that goal, maybe Rosalia, I'll come to you, is how can women play a very important role in trying to achieve this vision of A, having a cashless society, B, ensuring financial inclusion or getting people in the formal financial ecosystem. India also, for that matter, your statistics, India also has a very poor savings rate in terms of women or investments rate, or even for that matter, participation in the workforce. Right? We have 2 women on this panel, but otherwise it's probably not representative of the larger ecosystem. So how can women play a role in trying to do that? And maybe I'll come to you, Sachin, after that to maybe add.
I don't think women can play a role. I think we play the role in financial inclusion. To take it from rhetoric to reality, we are the gap. So not to, just throw out numbers, but I'm going to throw out some numbers. We make 80% of all purchasing decisions globally. We circulate over $70 trillion in the global market. How much of that do we own? We own 30% of what men own in the global market. This is why this idea of investing, it's so urgent, not only at the personal level, because here's this another scary number. We are 80% more likely to retire in poverty than men, regardless of how much we earn in the course of our career, regardless of our education. So, the examples that Paroma brought up, we're at both ends of those examples. And this is something that was really surprising when I started Bixie. When I originally started Bixie, my background was I left the United Nations after 10 years to work in FinTech, exclusively with the objective of bringing financial inclusion, right? And so I immediately thought, okay, I'm going to focus on last mile communities, technology, et cetera. Except before I launched Bixie, we did 6 months of focus group studies. And what we actually found was really terrifying. Women, like all of the women in this room, like myself, after a long, successful career at the United Nations, at white shoe law firms, I'm 33 years old, and I'm looking around, I'm like, do I own anything? Like, what is my investment portfolio? It's pretty bad. And when you go to urban centers all over the world, particularly millennials who are 25 to 41 years old right now, same story. MBAs, women who work in finance, investment bankers. I have pitched Bixie all over the world, and I cannot tell you how many times somebody has sent me a direct message afterwards, who literally is at an investment bank in Singapore, and she's like, okay, I don't. Where do I download the app? How do I get involved in this? This is much to our detriment, and what this means is if we can bridge that gap, not just Bixie, but the work of every single person in this room, it's about targeting women. Then we can be serious about financial inclusion. So what does that actually look like? Based on our research and the prevailing research, why women aren't investing, why a lot of the reason why we're not taking advantage of financial services is in part because of accessibility, but it's in large part of that accessibility is not just the hardware. That accessibility is about being on a journey that we understand. So a couple of things, as I mentioned earlier, I'm 40, so I've had a long career and a long life. And before I did my law degree, I studied economics, specifically behavioral economics. So I look specifically at when you kind of see socially people are doing or not doing something and it doesn't really make sense, you dig deeper. You don't just assume, oh, it's because they don't feel like maximizing their benefits. You kind of examine, well, why are 99% of women not investing? Why are brilliant, 33-year-old women in finance in London, why don't they have a portfolio? And what we actually found, it comes down to there's a number of behavioral distinctions that make it such that women don't want to invest. So one key finding that was only published in 2021, we don't invest because we lack confidence, and we lack confidence because we lack literacy. So we have a misperception that we know less than we actually do. So in order to trigger women towards investment, we have to give them knowledge, and then we have to build that confidence. The second really key finding, and I'm going to go back to, as you mentioned, this is anthropological, we're back around the cave. The men went out hunting. We were inside trying to figure out how to parse out scarce resources. So how we have been socialized to make decisions, financial decisions or resource decisions on scarce resources, is to talk to our peers and not financial advisors. This is real, and this is not me. This is Harvard Business Review. There's a number of studies about this. And then the third, so I think that's a really big distinction. We talk to our friends to de-risk financial decisions. And the third kind of behavioral thing is at the emotive level. When men think about money, they experience shame. Whereas women, we experience anxiety. So is it a surprise that the entire financial industry is based on confidentiality, which fixes shame? Where are our dimmed lights, our scented candles when we walk into a large investment bank? And I'm not being trite. In the medical industry, they've actually recognized this, and now they're offering birthing techniques with dimmed lighting, mood music, because they're trying to curtail women from having births at home, which is increasing, maternity death rates and infant death rates. So these are these small UX changes that we can make to bring women into the financial fold. So to summarize, we are the answer to financial inclusion. We're 51% of the world. We own less than a third of the resources. So if you unlock us and bring us into the fold, you will unlock this problem of financial exclusion.
Hey, thanks so much. Sachin, quick comment on that is women do participate, but probably they do it informally, and they do it within their families, essentially, right? And largely on the saving side, may not be on the investment side as much. So they may not have like a portfolio or assets, but they definitely participate, at least in India, on the financial saving side. So they are participating in financial decisions of the family. But I think and maybe a little bit more controversial and against what she said, is that they are saving money in cash, so it's not going to a cashless society. So getting more women into the formal ecosystem, does that help further the goal of cashless or not? So maybe your thoughts on that.
So I think just to extend on what you were saying, I think let's look at this from a product standpoint, right? As to how do we get women into the fold. I think one of the things that sometimes we as organizations end up missing out on, which you raised very eloquently, is around the emotional jobs that are needed in a product, right? So we all focus on building functional jobs, saying that, oh, we need to train somebody, we need to build this UX so that it's just 2 clicks and things like that, right? Where it's all functional. But they're very, very, the way I see it is that organizations that focus more, or at least put equal focus on emotional jobs and on understanding as to what the emotion is of the person who's using this, and now in this case, if we're talking specifically about women, we need to understand and build to that, right? So as you were saying, like mood, light, candle, dim lit, like whatever is needed for them to feel comfortable and for them to come into the fold. And now the different challenge in India is that you're then talking now about Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4 as well, right? And each of their behaviors are different as well, right? So one's on a psychological level, but then you've got these societal challenges as well. And I feel that building products around those emotional needs will bring women more into this fold.
Sure, go ahead.
If I can link the women topic, which again, as you can well imagine, no surprises for guessing, is very close to my heart as well, to cashless. And let me narrate a social experiment that I'm running in my own home on this tone, okay? I have 3 female domestic helps, which a lot of women here may relate to, who are running my household back in Bangalore while I'm here in Delhi talking to you guys. I've been running this for the last 1 year. I don't pay any of them in cash, right? The 3 women are all from Tier 4 originally. My full-time domestic help who lives in my house, right, has a son who's back there in the village with her own mother who's taking care of it, and she's there in the village. I give her her salary in a bank account on which a card is there, on which she has Google Pay activated on her mobile phone, right? My household she's running, like while I'm here, she's getting the grocery shopping and things done over there, using an account and a payment instrument on her mobile phone without me having left any cash with her to take care of expenses while I'm away, right? The money that goes sent back to her mother, back in her hometown, in her Tier 4 village in the tea gardens up in the northeast, goes electronically into a bank account there as well. And there comes in this whole saving and investment orientation. When I speak to them, they're like, want to accumulate that to buy gold, right? I mean, it's a natural phenomenon that you think that's just saving or
That's an
investment
asset right there.
in cement. When you educate the same set of people about gold ETFs, right? Like, wow, I can actually have an investment in gold-like asset which is secure and I'm not afraid of it being stolen away. When you create that awareness, you suddenly get that excitement from them that I can get my money electronically, I can save, I can invest electronically. Her son, we actually put him into a boarding school back there. And she got the confidence to do that when I said you can actually transfer his fees right here from Bangalore to wherever your son is in the boarding school. This is an absolute social experiment. My domestic helps have not had cash from me in a year. And they have translated that to other households that the part-timers work in, not taking cash. It's working seamlessly, and they love it, and they actually believe they're able to do more. So I think, to me, this entire feeling that women, since we're talking about that topic, they save in a particular way, and therefore we cannot debunk it, is the myth to be challenged. It's about making them aware of the possibilities, educating them about the benefits, and then world, be prepared to be surprised. Is the same set of people who will adopt and who will transform. And that's what we're here to make happen.
Sure, go ahead.
If I may, you did exactly the right thing. You had a touch point, a person of trust. They went to you, and that mitigated their financial risk. It's not just emotional. There are behavioral reasons behind this. And what you did is transformative. Suddenly, she's trading gold ETFs. Like, this is, so, you know, to your point, yes, currently, women save 71% of their assets in cash, which is hugely to our detriment in the middle of inflation. But it doesn't always have to be that way. We're not stuck there. If we pay attention to our behavioral and emotive distinctions, very easy to bring women into the fold.
Okay, I think we're running out of time, so this is going to be my last question, and I'll start with you, Sachin, and then maybe other people can jump in. Blockchain, which is the buzzword for quite some time now. I'm a big believer of the technology of blockchain to solve problems. Trading and all, which is happening right now, is a different ballgame altogether. Keep that aside. But the use case of blockchain was supposed to be, where I necessarily don't have to do a physical transaction with you, or for that matter, I don't need to. It's trusted. So we spoke a lot about trust, having a touch point. All of that gets solved in some ways with blockchain. But we don't see too much of the use cases sort of coming up, right? I mean, we know this, it's right now a little bit far away, but how do you think that blockchain can be leveraged to further this goal of becoming cashless? How can it be used for financial inclusion, men, women, all alike, but generally being able to reap the benefits of being a completely cash society? And I think maybe we'll be out of time, so maybe we'll go round robin on this question and maybe call it.
Sure. So for me here, see, blockchain, again, is just a technology. It depends on what we use blockchain for, right? So at the end of the day, if a centralized agency comes up with a blockchain solution, then it's just the same thing in a distributed ledger, right? So for me, the way I would think about it is, what are we trying to achieve here, right? So if we're trying to achieve anonymity, are we trying to achieve trust? What is our motivating factor? And this from all stakeholder standpoint, right? So not just the consumers. There'll be consumers, there'll be regulators. We all know how our regulator functions if they don't have oversight. So we've got regulators, and we've got the FinTech organizations, and everyone else in the ecosystem. We need to work through as to what are the various use cases that blockchain can help solve, bring that same sort of privacy and anonymity, and whether there are other ways of doing it, right? Not necessarily blockchain for blockchain's sake. There's, for example, there's the account aggregator framework that has been established, and there's a privacy bill that is being established as well. And from a technology standpoint, those can be done via blockchain or not, right? So
AA on blockchain. Anybody else? Rosalia, you want to go next?
I'll do it. I don't think it's a question of can blockchain create financial inclusion. It's already happening. I'm going to say the C word, crypto. It's already happening, particularly in places with runaway inflation. So there's that. There's the fact that cross-border payment rails, I mean, so easy to do that, with crypto without the transaction costs. That's already something that is happening. Vis-a-vis inclusion, women are the fastest growing market in decentralized finance. A lot of it is actually because of these behavioral reasons we talked about, the meetup to build trust, the ease of the transaction, the peer network to mitigate kind of, financial risk. So I think it's not a question of can it, I think it already is in a number of places around the world. We're seeing it. So really now it's a question of, how do we make this a safe and viable option? And I think that is the role of regulators. At the end of the day, it's about consumer protection, and how do we make this possible for groups who are otherwise excluded to be included in this in this potential opportunity. If I may add one more thing that you talked about earlier, Sachin, trade-offs, transaction costs. One big trade-off in transaction cost of cashless society is data and privacy. And I think in that regard, blockchain does offer a good alternative, because not all of our data, particularly the data of the lowest income earners, it won't necessarily be available for exploitation by centralized entities. So, I think that's something that obviously we could talk about, but time's up, so we can talk about that after the panel. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much. I think the big red flashing bulb there is telling us the time is up. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. It was a great session to moderate, and hope you guys had fun listening to us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.